So I've selected all my drum tracks in the mixer. It's important to do it in the mixer, not here, because it doesn't work up here weirdly. So I've selected it in the mixer, and then in this little group section, I'm going to send all of the drums to one new group. Up here, it's shown us a little group pane, and it's asking us to rename it. So let's call this drums, just so we remember what it is. The next thing, so we've clicked on our group, called it drums. Let's go into the settings, which is on the left there. So these settings are how we want our group to react. There's a default that usually has automation, volume and muting enabled. I'm going to turn those off because the key one I want is editing. I'm going to turn that on and also choose quantize locked audio. So those are the two important ones. If we're going to start editing the timing of our drums, our live drums, multi-track drums, all of the drums need to move as one, sample accurate. So checking these two boxes mean they all move as one. I'm also going to enable solo because it's quite useful to be able to click solo and it solos all of them in the same. Great. Let's turn on flexing. When I turn that on, it's going to do it for all of them because they're all part of the group. It may take a little while because it has to analyze each audio file, and what it's looking for is transients, and it's putting markers in for every single drum transient. So it's going through each drum track, analyzes it for transients, and I also want to make sure that it's set to slicing. I tend to find for multi-track drums the slicing preset is the one that sounds the best because it doesn't have any time stretching in its algorithm. It's a little bit like if we were to manually go through and slice up all the drums into individual hits and arrange them. Yes, tends to be the best one to choose. Logic does tend to analyze it and work out that it is drums by the type of files that it sees, and it often puts it as slicing as an automatic one anyway. So, great, so flex is on. It's set for slicing on all of our drums. Next thing, I'm just going to arrange them because by habit I like the kick and snare top to be at the top. Doesn't really matter where the others are, but what I am going to do, notice there's these little cues on the drums. Each drum track has a cue marker or the cue button selected. I'm going to turn it off for all but the kick and the snare. Again, generally, just having kick and snare selected for the cues is the best way of doing it. What it means is that if you use any quantize or if you're dragging these markers and lining up with the grid, it uses those two as the references. Because actually with the multi-track drums, if I put I just noticed the room hasn't been included. Just checking. Oh yeah, room, I hadn't included it in the drums. I need to make sure they all go, so let's add room to the drums as well. Room, turn on slicing. Put it to slicing. Okay. So turn off the cue for room. Especially important on room, because notice if I put room next to the snare, where is there a snare hit? Okay, well there's some kicks here. If I zoom in on the kick, the waveform's a little bit small. Let's just boost the waveform by pressing this button here. It's better. Yeah, it's useful. I can see that kick is falling quite far behind, so I'll have to sort that out. So let's grab a marker, but in a sec. What I wanted to first look at the difference between the kick, where that is, and the room. There's quite a big time difference. That's why it's important not to have cues turned on for the room, because if you quantize it, Logic's going to think we might want to quantize for that, and then it's going to push everything else out of time. So only cues for the close mic, kick and snare, because those are the main bits. All the other drums will follow. Let's sort this kick out then. So on bar 68, if you wanted to zoom in as well, quite close so you can see the timings. We can see that kick is quite far behind. So I'm going to move my mouse and I'm going to anchor it, put a warp marker in, but I'm going to anchor the two drums either side because they might be okay. I don't know, I haven't really looked. Notice with your mouse, when you move around, if you're above the 0 line, it looks like there's just one little marker. And if you just go down a little bit, you see 3. Having 3 is useful because it means when you click, as well as putting a marker where you've clicked, it also puts a marker in the transients to the right-hand side and the left-hand side. Notice because I've got a group running, it's put markers in all of the audio tracks as well. We don't need to do them all separately. If I zoom out a little bit so we can see. And if I grab this marker now and bring it back onto the line, these two stay the same. They're locked down. Also, when I drag this and move it around, notice all the others follow. And it's kept the respective timing difference as well. Now, a little bit like the vocals, I'm not going to go through and warp every single drum beat, but I know that there's some that are, it's particularly this little section here. From that bar, so I'm going to click to add a marker there, and it kind of gets back on, yeah, pretty much there. So I'm just going to lock that as well by warping there. So by placing a warp marker at the beginning and the end of the section that you're going to fiddle around with, it just makes sure that everything else before and after this in the song just stays locked down the same. I'll show you that. If I grab this one and move it, notice everything in between is just staying locked. So I'm just going to focus on kick and snare and go through there, looking at where each kick is falling. That one's all right. Let's bring that one up a little bit. That one's a bit ahead. It's mainly these first two bars here. The nice thing is Logic will always snap. You can see one is a bit out there as well. But let's just listen back to that part now. Put it on the click as well. It sounds pretty good. In fact, I think Logic sounds better than Ableton. I tend to do all my time stretching in Logic now for the invisibility. And also Ableton doesn't do this grouping of tracks, which is a big problem for live drums. Sounds pretty good. There's no obvious flamming or like weird digital artifacts. Once we're happy and we've warped our drums, then we can just close it. Oh, notice, is that one there a bit late there? Oh yeah, that's falling behind a bit. Looks like they all are. So let's grab that and just pull it back. Again, Logic's a bit funny. If the graphics aren't following, you just have to presume that the audio is. Sometimes Logic doesn't draw the graphics right. Like there, it suddenly looks weird. It's a little bit monotonous, but you start to get in the groove of it, and you can just do it by eye if you want. If you wanted it to be really tight, perhaps if you're using a drum machine, then it's important that the drums are tight up. One time-saving thing might be just to go through and drag the beginnings of each bar, just do it on the first beat of every bar, so that if there is any gradual moving out of time, you can fix that. Have a little play with that and experiment adding the warp markers.